So maybe, Mickael, for the little chit-chat before your conference. So what is Labellium exactly?
What is Labellium? Labellium is the largest agency nobody has ever heard of, which is true.
Just that.
We're a digital marketing group with 1,300 employees, with its head offices in Paris. So not but we were founded in 2008-ish. We were founded in 2001-ish, and I joined it in 2008. And the thing with Labellium is that we used to be a search agency, right? So we came from like the pure SEA kind of world. And then we realized being a pure SEA agency is a surefire way to go against the wall. And I will actually talk a little bit about why this is the case. And the idea we kind of had was to say, hey, each possible client of a digital agency today does at least 2 or 3 things really well. There is no client who is bad at social media marketing and bad at search marketing and bad at tracking and bad at creation and bad at SEO and bad at web development, right? Because if they were, they would no longer be a possible client because they would be dead. So that doesn't exist. So then coming in and saying, okay, we're a full service agency and we can do everything is a little silly, right? Because no client actually needs a full service. But instead, what we thought is, hey, what every client really wants is a kind of app store where they can ask for exactly the kind of services they have gaps in, permanent gaps, like we're just bad at tracking. We just need someone to kind of take the hassle away from tracking and make us understand our results. And temporary needs. The person responsible for our SEO is on maternity leave for 1 year, and we need a temporary kind of cover. We need some temporary help in this area until the in-house expert returns. So what we designed ourselves to be is to be this kind of app store for our clients where they can ask for exactly the services they need. We dynamically come in, we do our job, and then if we're no longer needed, we push them away. And the nice thing is we make everything feel the same. So all meeting minutes are taken in the same way and very systematic. All briefings are organized in the same way for search, for social, for programmatic, for display, for creation. So it all goes through an interface. You can find your meeting discussion from 2 years ago on the dot with each member of each team, documented, written down. So we make it really the iPhone of agencies, right? The most seamless, nice experience to work with us, which makes people want to add more of our apps, maybe in time, and maybe use them for longer. But this is really our philosophy. It's been working very well. We're working with very big clients like the LVMH group in France. It's been great because when I started at Labellium, I was managing all of L'Oréal Germany from my children's room, where I still had, my teddy bears, basically, because I was 17. And now we're, 1,400 people. So it's been very cool to see.
This is the story of Darwinism of enterprise after 2010. It's not 1 century of history, it's maybe 10 or 5 years and you change everything.
For sure, for sure. And in fact, what we're going to talk about today is basically the next big change, right? The next Darwinian event, the next meteorite impacting the planet.
Yeah, great, the meteorite impact. So everybody is here, so let's start. All in English, please prepare your question in English too. Mickael is very nice, as you can hear and see it. So it's his time, very internet people. Please welcome Mickael BERESIN, please. Right.
So indeed, I already talked briefly about us, just about me. So I've been a partner at Labellium since 2008, 2009. And being a partner at Labellium, like, what does that mean? So what do I do every day when I'm not, have the privilege to kind of talk to such an amazing group of students? We have 16 different expertises, these apps we talked about, SEO, SEA, creation, tracking, MarTech, et cetera, and I work with all of them to build our interdisciplinary offers. So I connect them all together globally because we are in 23 countries. I am absolutely religious about automating everything that is boring. So it is one of my key jobs to work with low-code, no-code automation tools. And whenever we detect anyone at the agency who has to do something 5 times in a row and it's boring and it's machines work done by human, we mobilize teams to make it automatic, to automate it instead of having humans repeat things. So boredom is the enemy. I also work with some very large clients on their more complex kind of marketing challenges. And I guess this gives me kind of like the status to talk to you today about kind of like the reality we see and what's happening on the market and how I diagnose like the situation of the big players in the digital sphere. And I still spend a lot of my day in ads accounts, in Google Ads accounts, in Meta Ads accounts, in all kinds of, in DV360 accounts. So I still mess around in advertising accounts every day. And I think one kind of key thing for me, at least, is you cannot be a strategist in digital and be kind of dégoûté, be kind of disgusted by actually going into the accounts. If you say, I'm a strategist, so I don't touch keyword lists, you're dead wrong. Right? It is strategic to actually touch the bones of the things because that allows you to make better strategies. So that's why we do it. That's why I still do it. That's why our president of the company still does it every day. The only person at Labellium who doesn't touch accounts is the CFO, the financial director. And we're not even so happy about that. So we'll tell you a little story today. So I will tell you about how the stuff that has been happening with AI has caused a real, actual panic on the market by the most, so robust, established companies that you can imagine. And why this did not have to be this way. Like it's the end result, but it could have gone quite differently. Then we look at what the big players, and we're going to talk about Google as the biggest one of all, as our key example, are afraid of, what their threat model is, we say. So what are the things they are actually afraid of? What are the things that actually make them panic? And how do they react? And then we'll look a little bit at how our industry, your future employers or your present employers, has reacted to this and changed to this, like to a degree. I will talk a little bit about this. We can actually talk much longer about this. And then I will impart some controversial kind of hot takes, statements on how I think companies, strategists, people in the industry should position themselves in this new reality. And I might be a little surprised why we talk about AI when today's theme was influencers. Hold on to the thought. We're going to come back to them at the end, I promise you. So let's get into it. But before we can fully get into it, we need to have a very short history and vocabulary lesson. So we talk about the same things, and especially because I notice so much how since the end of 2022, I'm using the kindest possible word, the bullshit bingo in terms of buzzword enunciation in business meetings around AI has become insufferable. And as digital experts, I see it as your obligation to be the ones in the room who use your words correctly and who make clear what is what in this space. So I just want to have a very short history lesson about AI. So in the 40s, there was something called automata theory, where basically people assumed that something is intelligent if it can solve any mathematical problem, which today we would not necessarily see as artificial intelligence, but back then that was like the closest kind of approximation. We're talking about Alan Turing and stuff like that. And then in the 50s, we had a group of people called the cyberneticists, and they theorized that there would be something that is actually human intelligence, but they left us with the worst definition of all time, the most useless definition of all time, and it's still the definition we have today. Because artificial intelligence, if you look at the English dictionary today, and I'm sure in Larousse it's just as useless, it will say that it's the ability of a machine to imitate human intelligence. But that doesn't tell you what that looks like, right? So it's kind of, if you know it when you see it, there's no criteria here where I can say, oh yeah, it's intelligent. It's just as soon as I'm confused enough by it to believe it's intelligent, I guess it's intelligent. So it's not a good definition. We don't really know what that is. But based on that, researchers and big companies like IBM started to work on stuff called symbolic AI. This is kind of a big word, but it's actually something very simple. Symbolic AI basically was saying, hey, we just make a lot of if-then statements, so a machine seems intelligent because we have programmed all the possible answers. So they did this for industrial systems like ships, ship loading. They did this for medical stuff. And basically for medical stuff, for instance, they might have said, does the patient have this hemoglobin level? If yes, does the patient have this problem? If yes, does the patient have this level? And if they just put in enough criteria, they said it would be intelligent at diagnosing one specific illness, or it would be intelligent at managing one specific ship loading barrier. But of course, this never could end up in something that seemed truly intelligent, right? Because you cannot program something that seems human. You cannot build ChatGPT by just making a lot of if-then statements, right? You cannot just program in all the possible things that someone might say. So this was a dead end. But then there was a second school of thought, and that one was called machine learning. And machine learning, basically, and I know there's people here who go much more in depth on that, but if I take the most kind of vulgar definition, it's programming with statistics. It's programming with multiplied by probabilities. It's adding a probabilistic dimension to my software. That's essentially how basic machine learning works. And then quite recently, in a tech context, quite far, but in a world history context, quite recently, we got to another thing, which is not the same as machine learning, which is deep learning. And deep learning is when we started to understand that we could build things called neural nets and basically train models. And the cool thing that happened there was that we would get things that do a specific task really well, but we can no longer quite understand how it does the task really well. We have a machine, we train it, we have an output, a model, which is a kind of a sequence of numbers, essentially, of statistical kind of interrelations, and it does something really well. But we cannot look at the model and then retrodict why it's so smart or why it does this one particular thing really well. So we enter a world of black boxes. We enter a universe of things that do things well but are incomprehensible ex post, like after the fact. And those in turn gave us large language models, diffusion models, and a bunch of other technologies, which then allowed us to have what we talk about today, which is Gen AI, which really is the thing that caused the hype since the end of 2022, which is the basis of ChatGPT, which is the basis of like a Midjourney and all other diffusion models and large language models, Llama, etc., etc. So don't confuse AI with machine learning. Don't confuse machine learning with deep learning. Don't confuse AI with Gen AI. These words have meanings, and you should not just throw them in a jumble. It is, I think, for us as digital experts to be navigators in this space and clarify what is what, right? And it's so much nicer if we can talk about the same things with the same words. So now, apropos Gen AI, Google was pretty stressed about Gen AI because in the end of 2022, ChatGPT was released. And then in 2023, Google had what we might call a no good, very bad year related to AI. And you may have seen this in the news. You may have seen this in the press. You may have seen it in memes. You may have laughed about it. But let's just quickly recap what happened. So ChatGPT was released in Q4 of 2022, like October, November 2022-ish. And immediately it became the fastest growing website ever. For good reason, because it was absolutely, awesome, right? Nobody has ever, interacted with something like this outside of kind of lab settings and very limited kind of experiments. And all the major tech players reacted to it and understood that this has, fundamental consequences. And Google in particular declared internally what they called a code red. They declared it to be the highest alert for all teams. They completely started restructuring and reshuffling all their dev teams, and they declared it the top priority of the company to not fall behind in this space. And we're going to talk about a little bit why this shocked them so much, because there's, Instagram, like there were other fast-growing websites that released after Google, but none caused this panic, right? Facebook existed after Google, and Google, tried to compete with it with Google Plus. That didn't work well, but they were not panicked about it. They were kind of indifferent about losing, essentially. It was not a big shock. But this one, panic mode. And then, in Q1 of 2023, they started, releasing their answer, and it's a disaster because the quality is very poor. The presentations were extremely embarrassing and became memes on the internet because they worked so poorly. And Google lost $100 billion in market value in one day after the initial presentation of BARD, of their answer. It's pretty bad. It was at the time, I think, the worst stock trading day for Google ever, and I think one of the 3 worst stock trading days for any stock ever in history of humanity. So it was not great. But then they started working on it. They started, at Google I/O later that year, in the middle of 2023, they started releasing better stuff. And then in the end, like at the end of last year, right, or middle of last year, Gemini, or BARD as it was called back then, was basically as good as ChatGPT. It was not significantly worse. It worked about the same. Nobody was particularly excited about it, so usage numbers were much lower. But it was objectively a very competitive product to it, and it was free to boot. So it was actually, there was no cost model to it. You could just use it infinitely, right? So, and they also had their B2B offerings. So you could start building, your own tools and your own software with the APIs of Google on the Google Cloud platform. So one could say, hey, Google was catching up, and there was no more reason to think that OpenAI or Facebook with Llama or anyone else would have such a huge advantage. And then this year, they went further. So at the very end of last year, they rebranded all their AI stuff to Gemini, and it works well, right? It's a good language model. Like, it's not worse than GPT-4. Like, some stuff it does better, actually. Some stuff it does worse, but that's normal. But the usage numbers never followed, right? It's used, but not to the same degree as ChatGPT. Their image generation is not used to the same degree as, again, DALL-E by OpenAI or Midjourney. So it's still second tier. And also in terms of app development, while the OpenAI APIs are used for thousands of newly released startups, for new apps, for new solutions in big SaaS tools, the usage of Gemini for custom software has remained limited. Not zero, but not crazy. And again, despite the tools being good, right? Perfectly comparable in many ways. So the next step by Google was to say, hey, this year, let's put our AI stuff everywhere. Let's put it in all of our other tools, in all of our other things. First of all, announced at Google I/O, like 3 or 4 weeks ago, then also for all the marketing stuff in Google Marketing Live. And this gave us what's animated here, what you can see, we'll just cycle in a second, but it gave us AI overviews, which is basically the Bing AI equivalent at Google, where it gives you an AI-based answer within search results. This did not go well in the last few weeks. It's quite new. Google had a lot of quality problems. There was a lot of bad press around it, much more bad press than ever at Microsoft Bing. It had some shocking stuff. So here's, like, for instance, a headline where, it showed that when you asked ChatGPT Barack Obama's religion, it said he was Muslim because it scraped kind of, American right-wing conspiracy websites where this is a big topic, but it had much worse stuff as well that they didn't put on the slide. It told a depressed person to kill themselves, to jump off a bridge, as a recommendation on how to treat the depression. It recommended as a pizza recipe to put glue on a pizza. So, because there was an old joke on Reddit about making a pizza with glue, so the cheese stays nice and consistent. So it's pretty bad. So we have to ask ourselves kind of the question: Google, in its power and in its innovation, and it's an amazing company, but they're also normally very conservative. And they were especially historically very conservative about their core product. Their core product, search, has a promise of being quick, automatically well-ranked, well-sourced answers from the web. And then suddenly, in a panic mode, in a few months, they dump out something that is slower, has unreliable, faulty answers, at least right now, with no source, because you don't have a source. It's just kind of some statement that says, yep, you should put glue on your pizza. That's like the wisdom of the web. So why the hell would Google do that, right? What could drive Google to essentially step on the gas and just go way too fast in a way on tools that really, really depend on users kind of trusting them and relying on them? So the diagnosis that we're going to have here is to say, hey, this did not have to happen this way. Because in fact, Google is an absolute pioneer on AI research, right? ChatGPT, the T stands for transformer. Transformer is a tool, like an original kind of AI model developed by Google, right? ChatGPT is built on open sourced Google research from 2017, 2018, 2019, and even before. So they were the origin of it. It is built on the kind of the bones of Google's pioneering work in AI. And also, we're going to talk about this a little bit later. Nobody in the world makes more money off AI than Google, because Google ads, search ads, are fully AI driven. We're going to talk about this a little bit later again. They are the most profitable advertising format in history. Nobody makes more money with AI, with an AI-based tool than Google, ever, right? So why do they fail on execution afterwards, or why at least doesn't there seem to be a huge success in their execution in the user front end? And also, they have among the biggest AI kind of investment portfolios within the Alphabet umbrella, within their larger family. Nobody is invested in more AI companies than Google. Microsoft is like on 8th place in comparison, despite their OpenAI investment, right? So Google has much more investment in innovation in AI than anyone else. And still this happened. So what I'm going to posit here is that Google is not actually really that afraid about OpenAI. This is not the core problem, and this is not what should stress you. It is just a symptom. It is just a side effect. And what should really kind of be top of our minds are two dynamics that work together. So the first dynamic that I want to look at is the customer journey. What it's like to, swim in the internet, be kind of a customer, and try to do something on the web. ChatGPT makes a lot of things much easier than before. So let's say I go on the internet and I'm at work, and my boss tells me I need to do something in Excel, something complicated that I know I don't have a clue about Excel. Whatever. We all have imposter syndrome about using the software we're supposed to use. So what I do, I Google the solution. Except I no longer Google the solution now, because asking ChatGPT a programming question, an Excel question, is so much better. It's like incomparably better. If I have here like a list of things, and I want an Excel formula to classify it. I ask ChatGPT, it gives me the formula, and it actually also classifies them for me right away. Didn't even need the formula in the first place, because it actually does the job for me. Meanwhile, imagine searching this on, why would I still just Google this? So, fun fact, programming related search queries have crashed by 40%. Right? So people who would like search for programming questions no longer do. And it's really cool because you also have a conversational experience. So if the first response is not perfect, I can just fine tune it. I cannot fine tune my Google search, really. Either the website has what I need it to have, or it doesn't, and I need to find another website. But I cannot say, hey, on this website, could you formulate it in a different way so I understand it better? No chance. So it's a superior solution for some searches. And these searches, like here's like, for example, programming question. You might say, who cares? Like, it's not a transaction. Nobody's buying anything, how to split columns in Excel. It's not transactional, but it matters a lot. It matters a lot because there's something called the attention economy, which means how much % of your time do you spend on a website? What is your reflex, right? And for 20 years, everyone on the web had a Google reflex. If you don't know something, if you need something and you don't know where it is, you'll go to Google. And nothing broke this fundamental reflex. It was like kind of like the basic layer. It was like the RER of the internet. Like it's it's unavoidable. You have to take it to come here. But now there's a new completely different medium that competes with it and is better than it. So now I might no longer have a Google reflex. I might have the reflex to go to another website, another platform, another tool, ChatGPT, for instance, and that might then translate over to other searches. It may no longer be my homepage, right? So all of that stuff matters a lot. And also, that data matters a ton. So let's say, for instance, I asked, on Google, how to recognize email addresses in Excel, how to create a formula that tells me which line has a correct email address and which line doesn't. What Google will say is, hey, that person probably works in or around or with CRM tools or might need a CRM tool. The CPCs for CRM tools are, I think, 25 euros per click, something like that. So this audience is super valuable. It's crazy valuable. It's millions to know who the people are who manipulate email addresses. So while these searches are non-transactional, they feed audiences which are very transactional, right? So even stuff where you might say, it's not, buy makeup online or whatever, but it's like completely non-transactional, actually matters a lot. And Google losing tens of percentage points of market share on these types of queries hurts them. It's really bad for them. And then transactional searches, pretty spooky too, for Google. Let's take, for instance, booking a flight. With add-ons and extensions in most AI frameworks, I can now formulate a question and say, hey, find me flights tomorrow from Vienna to Milan or from Vienna to London at 5 p.m. And it will tap into Expedia's API and provide me a clean, mostly correct response with the exact kind of flights that are relevant for me, with direct booking links to the exact flights via Expedia. That's pretty awesome. And then I can just say, now find hotels. I don't need to re-specify my travel dates. I don't need to re-specify where I'm going because the context is in the conversation and it will automatically find me hotels that fit the flight dates that I configured before and provide me with booking links. Imagine how much it sucks to kind of book kind of a trip on Google. You have to constantly go back and forth. You have to have your dates noted on the side. You have to know, on which city do you need to depart or arrive. You cannot have like one flowing conversation with Google about this. You have to do all the organization yourself. Now, the trap here is that obviously those are not the best possible offers. They're pretty good offers, but they're so nicely curated that it's quite tempting to just go this way. And then let's look at this same experience on Google, right? I type in, flight Vienna to London next Tuesday, right? If I click on a Google search result here, I will have to re-enter all the information. I will have to re-enter the dates. I will have to re-enter potentially the city, etc. Some results are actually going to really mess me up. For instance, here's like flights to London City. London City is a specific airport within London. So it will tell me that there are no flights because there's actually no flights going from Vienna to London City, which is a specific small airport within London. Because Google search just cannot accommodate this kind of nuanced question, really kind of grasp being a strong word, the context.
Ouais, Laurent, c'est super d'entendre, mais si tu peux couper ton micro. Merci Laurent.
And actually the most useful part of the search result page is this thing here, the Google flight results, which is not Google search, which is just a separate module. It has nothing to do with Google search. And then below that are the SEO results. So I'm going to ask you, if I type flight Vienna, London next Tuesday, will the SEO results be useful in any way? Will you ever click them? Absolutely never. It will be some weird tracking information from old flights. It will be a complete mess. Nothing in the SEO results will actually be useful, a good customer experience to find the best flight from Vienna to London next Tuesday. So the experience sucks, actually, in comparison. The experience is really bad. It's not that useful. And then when I want to search a hotel, I have to do everything from scratch. And it's also only the Google Maps module here that is actually useful, which, by the way, Google had to kill now for DMA, for the new European legislation, forcing them to decouple, unbundle their services. So the experience is really bad in comparison, and they know it. They know that the experience is worse. And if I am, a smart traveler in the year 2025, I will not book my flight this way because it kind of sucks. It's not that great. So what we posit is that there is a new paradigm shift happening. You may remember this, no, but you may have heard that there was a paradigm shift 15 years ago in the web, when the web moved from directories to search engines, from Yahoo to Google. Before Google, we were in a world where Yahoo search existed, but it was not really a search engine. All websites manually registered in the directory, and then you just searched its own directory. It did not actually crawl the web. That only came later. So the Yahoo directory was the predecessor kind of paradigm. And then the first search engines came up, and it was not Google, by the way. And Google was really the search engine that took over the throne of being like the navigational basis of the web. So we had a migration from web directories to search engines. And now we have a second paradigm shift happening. There's the second big shift, because we go from search engines to LLM chat things that we don't have a good name for yet. We go for these new types of experiences because they filter out all the noise in a way and provide us with what we really want, which is a clear answer. Now, unfortunately, very often this answer is wrong or not the best price or whatever, and that's another family of problems. But more than anything else, people want a clear answer. And that is very powerful, and there is a huge dynamic in the way that customer journeys will be changing. But we don't know in what form they will win, right? It might be ChatGPT, right? It might be this thing where you go to chatgpt.com and you then load your Expedia module and then you do your travel search. Or maybe stuff like Google's AI overviews, hybrid experiences, or like Bing search with the AI copilot will win. So these mixed experiences of search and AI search. Maybe that will win. Maybe stuff like chatbots within WhatsApp that are AI-driven, or chatbots within Discord. By the way, Discord also invests a lot in AI, will win. Because people will say, hey, I want to chat. I want to have these chat experiences in a place where I'm already chatting, right? It's maybe much more natural to have like a chat with a chat bot, with an assistant within WhatsApp, than it is to go to a separate website or separate app called ChatGPT and have the chat there. And you know that one of the biggest investors is Meta with Llama, which is also the most useful kind of semi-open sourced model that you can use for your own little projects and own little models. Or maybe we go back to assistants who have died a little bit. I saw just there, voice is dead. It is, but there's some necromancy happening here. And if you saw Apple's announcements last week, they are raising Siri from the dead with AI and making her useful again, which is pretty cool. So maybe these assistant device things, Google Assistant, Siri, Alexa, enabled and empowered with Gen AI, will be the winning mode to have these kinds of interactions. We don't know which one will win, but we know that in there is a way of dealing with the internet that is fundamentally better than search, that is fundamentally more useful, more nice, more easy to use than search. So we know one of them will win. And the interesting thing is, even if Google wins, they still have a huge problem because they don't know how to make money of it. They know very well how to make money of Google search, but they don't know how to make money of AI results. There's another problem. your future employers, your future clients, if you go agency side, they don't know how to manipulate those AI results and how to make sure that they are mentioned in there. It's new territory, right? So this is what's stressing everyone out. You know, even if Google wins, they don't know necessarily how to monetize it. Now they're starting with some monetization, but they haven't figured it out yet, right? Nobody has. It's new ground. So the first big thing that is spooky to Google is that there's now something that is potentially, maybe in some ways, better than search. And it exists. It's not yet more used than search or anything like that. It has its problems. It hallucinates a lot, and it will continue to hallucinate. Alignment is a big problem. But it's there. And that is very spooky. So reason number one for red alert. Reason number two for red alert is even scarier, because it's something that actually happened before AI even started, but AI is accelerating it. And I'm going to put a bad word on the screen now. I'm not going to get canceled for it, because there were some journalists that used the word, the enshittification of the web for it. So this is, for instance, from, you know, Financial Times article saying users advertise are all trapped in the enshittification of the internet, the emmerdification of the internet. So what are they talking about? Right? That's like a very weird term. Maybe has any one of you heard the term? So it's a huge topic, and it is a hugely impactful dynamic that has many reasons. But essentially, what it means that on the whole, globally, for people who have, you know, seen the evolution of the internet, of the web in particular, so websites over the past 15, 20 years, they are getting less useful and worse every year. Everything on the internet is getting less useful constantly from a user perspective. So you say, hey, why? Because like there's more usage, there's more tools, there's more apps, there's like lots of cool new stuff. What's happening? So first, there is a decline of high quality niche websites. So here, for instance, is the logo of something called the bimmerforums.com. Bimmerforums.com is an enthusiast forum for owners of BMW cars. It has tens of thousands of active members, and it is the one place of the internet where you can go and say, hey, on my 15-year-old BMW car, there's this light blinking. I don't know what it does. It's out of warranty. My mechanic doesn't know what to do with it. And in 10 seconds, you will find experts who will tell you exactly what it is, exactly what to do, and exactly at which, you know, eBay vendor you can still find the replacement parts for your car. It is a crazy cool resource for enthusiasts in this particular space. And you know, there used to be thousands of these niche communities which provided a ton of the value of the internet. And in fact, they were kind of like the raw material, the matière première for Google, right? Because Google needs these niche informations, because Google is there to find this weird forum that you've never heard of, where you have the exact correct answer to your niche specific question. That's, you know, that's what makes Google so cool. But the problem is these websites are all dying. These websites were all dying because of lack of ad revenue. These websites were all dying due to the consolidation of the media space. And now they are dying in turbo mode because AI is just scraping their content, right? It's just looking at the stuff that's already there. People learn that, hey, for past stuff, people can just go to ChatGPT to get the answer because it's scraped. So nobody needs to bother to register, go in there, engage, create ad revenue, register, whatever. So these websites die out. So the fact that they had good content becomes their own downfall. They get scraped, they get subsumed, and it's kind of a snake eating itself. Ouroboros, right? So that's awful. And we're losing a lot of these websites. Now, for websites that don't want to die, they isolate themselves from Google. So for instance, one very famous example here is Reddit. Reddit, which I assume many of you know, has limited scraping by AI, limited scraping by Google, and now asks other websites, other companies to pay to scrape their content. But the most valuable content in many ways lives completely outside of the web. I cannot tell you how much valuable stuff that used to be on the internet, on the open web, now lives in Discord forums or in other kind of chat channels, in WhatsApp groups, in Telegram groups, in completely isolated islands of the internet that are no longer accessible via Google or via the web, right? The best men's fashion community on the, the English language internet was on Reddit. Now it's on a private Discord, right? They completely isolate themselves from being scraped. And then a related dynamic to this is also the generification of e-commerce websites. Because when you have AI-based text generation, AI-based product, copy generation, it becomes very tempting to say, hey, let's just become a marketplace. And I'm sure you've heard about this a lot within your studies about, transforming singular e-retailers into marketplaces. And what happens in some cases is that all the retailers end up with the same crap from Alibaba, with AI-generated text, with AI-generated copy, and complete interchangeability between one retailer or the next, right? If I go to the US e-retail space, it is horrible already. It is so generified. Everyone tried to make a marketplace, and everyone kind of sells the same, everyone of course, but a lot of large retailers kind of sell the same crap with very generic, non-useful copy, non-useful text. And again, AI is a huge accelerator for this. And again, this is kind of a self-defeating dynamic. So between all of this, we can create like a huge grid, and I will not go through all of this, of stuff that makes the internet worse than it was. And all the red stuff here is stuff that is drastically accelerated by AI. Like the, massive SEO kind of, made for SEO content, purely SEO content without, actual extra value for users, et cetera, et cetera. And the end result is, if I search for, what is the best skin cream, you would be insane to look at, the Google search results and say, oh yeah, that's credible, right? The listicle, the 12 best skin creams on, Vogue.com. You don't believe that that's really objective, good advice on what the best skin cream is. Nobody does. It's completely incredible. And actually, it's quite tempting to just say, hey, what if I ask ChatGPT and it gives me like a clean, authoritative sounding text that says, hey, CeraVe, La Mer, and Neutrogena are among the best ones. That's a very neat and clean experience. Very tempting, much more credible, actually. Is it actually credible? Nah, but it feels much more credible. It feels much cleaner. It feels like almost an answer to this mess that kind of nobody cares about anymore. And I'm overstating it. Of course, it's still these huge usage numbers. But by the way, who is, actually present here? Also a little weird. In fact, a website called Detailed did an analysis, and 16 companies, which have over 500 brands, dominate 80% of all searches in the English language Google. So 80% of top results on Google are dominated by just these 16 companies with, hundreds of different brands, but just these 16 companies. And not only is this, kind of weird, because the internet is supposed to be this medium that allows everyone the best information to have a voice, and one would not necessarily assume that these 16 companies just have the best answers for everything. It is particularly awkward because almost all of these companies are heavily leveraged, which means that they have a lot of very, very aggressive revenue targets. They have to grow and they have to be cheap. Most of them, not all of them, but most of them. So this leads to a kind of a race to the bottom, that these websites, these companies, in many ways are incentivized to create the most made for SEO content that dominates the search result pages the most while investing the least. And they're succeeding. And it's cool. And they're making a lot of money of it. But it fundamentally eats the foundations of Google, right? Every year that the situations like this, and we all kind of collectively realize that the situations like this, Google is a little bit less appetizing to use, a little bit less useful to use. And in fact, many people will now say that actually the ads are more useful than the SEO results in many cases because of this, which is absolutely not to say that all of these websites are bad. That is not true. Lots of good journalists, lots of good stuff. but their incentives are not aligned to create the highest quality, content for users, but their incentives are aligned to create the most revenue-driving content the cheapest. And I'm not being dystopian here. Here's an article from Wired that is really dystopian, that is really apocalyptic. And I'm just going to read the quote. We are living through the end of the useful internet. That's spooky. The future is informed discussion behind locked doors in discords and private forums, with the public-facing web increasingly filled with detritus, that's crap, generated by large language models, bearing only a kind of a stylistic resemblance to actually useful information. That's a little scary as a vision, but it's not that far off. And this was an article about Reddit essentially being one of those last bastions of kind of useful content. And by the way, here in SEA, where I work a lot with search engine marketing, one of the most interesting user behaviors over the past 10 years is that informed users who research something before LLMs were around would just put Reddit at the end of the search. Best skin cream, crap. Best skin cream, Reddit. I get to a Reddit discussion about the say best skin cream, pretty useful. So it actually became a technique to get good results to just put Reddit at the end of every search, because it was kind of like the last bastion of utility. So, food dynamics for Google. A new paradigm, a new model that promises a better experience for users with a background of a primary kind of resource matter of the web being less and less useful in the perception of the users, more and more degraded in the perception of the users. So you are entering in a digital space in flux, in a digital space that is about to change quite a bit because of this. Google, people are ready to do stuff differently. People want this change. And you will be there with your clients to navigate this change. And it's awesome. It's cool. It's exciting. So just some quick words about how stuff changed for us. And I'm going to go very quickly through this. I guess some of you are familiar with search engine marketing, SEA, and have played around with it or worked in it. Others no. So just very quickly, in 2008, an SEA campaign was campaigns that you configure manually with ad groups that you configure manually, where you then tell Google, hey, I want to appear in these key, with these ads, with these texts, which I put in manually, on these keywords, which I put in manually. Pretty easy. Today, it's no longer the case. This is no longer how anyone, books search. Or, you can still do it, but it's not how 80% of search bookings are handled. 80% of search bookings are handled via automated campaign types. You have a campaign. You plug in a product feed, a location feed, a hotel feed, audience feeds from your CRM tools. You plug in your landing pages, which get scraped by Google for content. Google analyzes your landing pages for content. You plug in your assets, little bits of text, text fragments, images, videos, you just throw them in there. And then the machine remixes the stuff and generates the campaigns automatically. And there's a lot of technique to then managing and handling this automation to still do what you want it to do. But this is how a campaign is actually organized today. It is completely AI-driven already. It's not Gen AI, it's traditionally kind of deep learning, machine learning, but it is absolutely how campaigns are operated. They are purely AI operated. And I'm going to skip over this example, but afterwards, you want to know some more specific details of how that works, we can go back to this example. So our job in digital marketing has evolved. We used to be watchmakers who kind of manually tinker with a machine and make it, perfect on our own devices. And we decided exactly where everything goes. Then, through programmatic exchanges and the ad auction, we became brokers, finding arbitrage opportunities on a market, finding cheap inventories, finding opportunities, finding cheap audiences, finding high-performing audiences, making bets. And now we have kind of become wranglers, cowboys, in a way, who need to take an animal, a black box, a machine that we don't really fully understand, that we cannot fully talk to, and make it do exactly what we need it to do. Which is kind of weird, but extremely fun and exciting as a job. And there's a lot to learn and a lot to do. We still have to be watchmakers and brokers too, but now we also have to be animal wranglers, cowboys, masters of the black box. And this stuff didn't happen in 2022. It happened in 2015, actually. So the AI revolution is not new in advertising, in media. Gen AI is somewhat new, but we've been in the AI space for a long time. So some closing kind of ideas, words to keep you engaged, and I stick around for questions if anyone has them. What I think your core reflection, your core thought should be, is that there is, behind the whole AI, Gen AI discussion, there is a real credibility crisis at the core of internet marketing decisions of the web, right? At the bottom, we are talking about problems of credibility, of trust. And the idea of the useful web has already been in question before Gen AI, and it's really in question now. So that means there's two questions for you, your clients, us, agencies, whoever. One, if websites become less and less useful, how can I be different? How can I be kind of a bastion, a fortress of usefulness in a sea of kind of crap? And two, if the web is kind of lost and useless, and if people just turn away from websites, from the open web, where else on the internet, beside websites, can I still engage and find my success? So how do I become a bastion of utility? Well, if I look at, reviews, for instance, reviews are a space that is totally enshittified. If I search for, there was a very famous article that I can share with everyone afterwards about the quality of reviews for air purifiers, and they found that all of those reviews never tested a single air purifier. They never had one in the first place. They just wrote random crap about air purifiers and recommended the one that paid the highest commissions. So all of these articles, dead wrong, pure lies, but they dominated the internet. What is the answer to this? The answer is to invest in real-world research, real-world content, physical proprietary tests for fashion, photographing stuff at different light levels to see the colors, real-world information, how do clothes fit, how does stuff work, like stuff that actually takes effort to put on the internet and not just an SEO copywriter, right? Stuff that requires research, testing, development, creativity, smarts, knowledge, which means that it's the moment for authoritative brands to succeed because they have the tools for it. And human curation, outfits, coordination, like in the makeup space, maybe you need to time looks with products, with tutorials, with local estheticians and experts, and provide a packaged experience if you want to replicate a specific look, right? This is an example from a YouTuber in the tech space, and they are investing massively in testing for keyboards, for instance. And what they built a lab, a laboratory, where they have, and they spent millions on it, where they provide actual data on how the keywords work and perform, and measurements and videos and all the stuff on how they sound and how they perform, actual proprietary information that is differentiating. There is no doubt that these reviews are actually useful because they spend a lot of money to make them, because they have proprietary knowledge, or at least expert knowledge to provide them. This is an opportunity to be differentiating. But the thing is, it costs money. It costs more money than just paying a copywriter. It's a reality. And this is a very cool opportunity because it means that we will get to work on cool, big projects. And then if the web is fundamentally not credible, where to find credibility on the web? So if I search because I really needed a good skin cream for people with beards, on Google, we already established, it's kind of crap. So where will I find it? Well, how about TikTok search, right? We talked about how maybe ChatGPT is a good answer. It's a fine answer. But the even better answer is something that isn't even AI-based in the first place. One could think that TikTok search, where I have somewhat credible responses by people that I can look at and kind of feel a level of trust, or who I actually already know and feel a level of trust, and get an answer that is appropriate for me, that I then actually believe in on what the best skin cream for my face might be. So we kind of could have a very weird scenario where in search, the real winner maybe isn't ChatGPT or anyone else at all. Maybe the real winner are influencers, and maybe the real winner is TikTok search, right? Because the credibility may live there outside of the open web, and it benefits heavily from parasocial trust, So it also is problematic and can be manipulative and all of these things. So people will find issues with it too. But it is vastly superior to the listicles we saw before. So we will not see any stop in influencers' voices kind of cannibalizing the credibility of search and subsuming a larger and larger space. So you see, we went right back to the influencers and their importance. It was a very long argument on the importance of influencers, among others. And with that, I thank you.
Thank you too. So this is a perfect transition with our last topic about influence marketing. Do you know Google will die in few years?
Well, I guess I should stand up. So no, Google will not die. Google has, from a financial point of view, a level of robustness that can survive a lot of down cycles. And I'm gonna tell you, like Yahoo is still around, right? Yahoo is still around, actually still making money. So like Google will not die. But what might die is the Google reflex. What might die is Googling as a synonym almost for using the web. Googling may just become another function of using the web, like going on Instagram, like going on TikTok, like going on Facebook. It's another kind of sub-function of the web, but no longer the colonne vertébrale.
Some question in the assistance? In English, please.
Yes, please.
Just wait, please.
Just speak up a little bit. Yes.
Come here.
No, it's okay.
Yeah. So
yeah.
So the question is that whether other search engines might subsume it. I doubt it, because the other search engines would have, like if it's just about web search, would have the same problem as Google, that actually the matière première, the actual quality of the websites itself is in question. So they can also only show you the listicles because the cool websites have, are on death watch, basically, have like the last bit of energy left and are getting less and less content, less and less users, and are being cannibalized. So the interesting stuff is already on TikTok, it's already on Discord, it's already kind of gone into other corners of the web. So you could have the best search engine in the world almost, and it would not have problem. So actually Google is still in the best position to make the best out of what's there. It's just a question of if what's there is worth scraping.
Other question? Maybe another. So about TikTok or social medias, do you think this is maybe something we will have in few months, few years, the social media's reflex, or it's already the case? For example, I am on TikTok and my full experience on the web is only TikTok.
So I don't think we will ever get back to a full web experience being kind of mono media or mono format, right? You may have this in other countries. You may have this in markets, for instance, where there's no net neutrality and you only get TikTok for free on your phone, but nothing else. So there are places, in sub-Saharan Africa, for instance, where internet providers are structured in this way. There's places in Southeast Asia where internet providers are structured this way. There's China, where you have the WeChat-centric user experience, where everything is kind of subsumed in WeChat. It's still not monomediatic, but for a lot of Chinese customers, they just live in WeChat, basically. And it works fine because everything is in there. But in the Western paradigm of how we use the web, no. I think that the real answer is to look at specific demographics multiplied by specific topics. So how do young people research fashion? Maybe there, Google might just be dead and they might live in a 100% TikTok space, right? So if you look at these permutations, you will find these islands of total domination by some media.
Yes.
Okay. Do you think that marketing digital will be exact science with the new function of EA and the true science like physics, like math?
It's
Yeah.
it's weird because it's kind of actually the opposite. Um, it's it's very interesting actually, and thank you for that question. Basically, 5 to 10 years ago, tracking on the internet was the most precise it's ever been, actually, because we had no GDPR, we could mostly track most users, the percentage of ad block and script block usage was well understood, and in most markets, in Germany it was huge, you know. I will not tell you about German, Austrian internet users. It's like my daily work, so it's rather painful. But it was actually quite precise. And then we had GDPR. Then we had iOS 14.5. Then we are now having iOS 18 with huge changes that you should have on your radar. Then we had DMA. Then we had the end of third-party cookies, maybe next year or the year after, right? So actually, what we are getting is less and less precision in the raw data we have, on one hand. On the other hand, we also see that clients actually don't want or should not operate on the things that can be measured exactly. Operating your online store on revenue is a little dumb because you need profit and not revenue, and actually you need lifetime value and not just profit. And profits can be guesstimated rather well. You can have, your COGS, your cost of goods sold, and then you have an estimation, and you can bake in all kinds of fixed costs. And in lifetime value, you can only estimate, but that's actually the measurement of value. The online shop that only operates on short-term revenue instead of on long-term lifetime value might operate more precisely, but they will also die. So it's not useful to be precise. So with less precise basic data, and the need to model abstract out stuff like lifetime value, long-term effects, complex customer journeys where you have to model out people going through 5 or 6 different media, we actually go from a measured world of media to a modeled world of media, where we work much more in the abstraction. There, AI helps a lot to do this well. Machine learning, deep learning is the tool to do this well. Attribution modeling, media mix modeling, this is what we need. Right? But it is actually technically less precise, but it is more useful.
Other questions, please?
We have one here.
Yes. Just wait.
Do you think that one day ChatGPT will use like advertising such as Google Ads for like promote brands or something like this?
I don't know. So the first question to ask ourselves is really which paradigm will win, right? Because maybe it will be a ChatGPT-like experience that will win. But as we saw, maybe it will be assistants that win. Maybe Siri, the new AI-driven Siri, will be what kind of eats up this kind of customer experience. And there will be no ads there, for sure. Maybe it will be Google Assistant, or maybe it will be an experience within WhatsApp that will do it. So the first question is which kind of platform for these AI conversations will actually become the dominant model. And then the second point is if it's like a hybrid experience, like on the Google search result page, or a pure chat experience, like on ChatGPT, different companies will have different monetization models. Yeah, but for instance, if you take the example of ChatGPT, OpenAI, they don't need money for a long time. They are so well financed and their market is so happy to finance them further that just based on that, there's no need for them to monetize. While Google, on the other hand, absolutely do have a need to monetize it eventually because they need to maintain investor trust. But they still have quite a bit of patience. That being said, Google has announced just 2 weeks ago, that within their AI overviews responses, we will be able to book ads. So it's just it's a question of financials, it's a question of investor wishes, and it's less a question of technicality. But the macro question to ask yourself really is not, will ChatGPT have ads, but whether is ChatGPT really the end point of where people really want in 10 years to have these conversations? Will your grandkids go to, it's an overstated case, go to like an extra website with like the chat interface in black and put in the little questions? Or will it be on a device? Or will it be in a chat experience they're having anyway? Or will it be subsumed in the search experience overall? I don't know. That's kind of thing, and from that will derive the question of monetization.
Last question.
Don't be afraid.
Yes.
Hello, I have a question about IA. Do you think that there will be some restrictions in the future for the use of IA when we talk about environmental issues?
So from a legal point of view, do you mean, or from
your point of view? Yeah.
Whether it will be restricted? Sure, like the AI Act, like the EU AI legislation has actually already come into effect. So we already start to have some level of legislation, and it will continue to evolve. You saw how that worked with privacy and GDPR, that it's not necessarily, it is quite cumbersome, and it may not really solve the problem, because are we really being tracked less? It's to be discussed, right? So there's a willingness to regulate, right? And there's a willingness to control it on one hand. On the other hand, we already have things like Llama, which is Facebook's or Meta's open source model, which allows me with 200 euros to create a perfectly functional large language model trained on specific data to do a specific thing. Nobody can take this away from me. It's on my computer, like nobody can regulate this, and it does its thing. So the genie is kind of out of the bottle, right? The ghosts are here. So the question, I think, is not about regulation. The real question is about acculturation to its use. So for instance, one kind of golden rule that we always propose to people is that good AI use cases, and this will really become something like something kids will need to learn, right? This is just a basic thing. Good AI use is stuff that is hard to do, but easy to verify. It is good to ask ChatGPT to recap a text, because I can look at the recap text and say, this is correct. It is bad to ask ChatGPT who the president was, the US president was in 1822, because it will tell me a name, but I will not know if it's true. And ChatGPT will not know if it's true either. It may be true. It's right now it's more true than false. On AI overviews by Google, it would be mostly false, but it's not trustworthy. So AI is bad at answering stuff that you don't know, but is really good at doing quickly things that where you can verify the end results, but where it would be very chiant, very annoying to get there. So this is kind of like the philosophy that we'll have to adopt about using AI. So we will not be able to put the AI, genie back into the bottle, just like we are seeing right now with public discourse, with social media, that we also say, hey, a lot of this stuff, we may have wanted to regulate this stuff a little bit more before it got so crazy. But it has, and now we have to learn and get the literacy, the media knowledge to deal with it. So it's more about education, I think, the future, because it's there, right? We cannot uninvent it.
So in conclusion, you have the top of French education in digital marketing. They are our future. So what are your advices for them? What should they learn? What should they improve?
I think there is two things really. First, what you shouldn't do. It is not the answer to say everyone needs to learn AI, machine learning. Not everyone needs to become a data scientist. Not everyone needs to become a mathematician. Just like it was not true 15 years ago to say everyone needs to learn how to program, right? It wasn't really true. Not everyone didn't need to learn how to program. And by the way, everyone who spent a lot of time learning how to program, now a lot of them realize that actually for the stuff they're actually doing, they no longer need to program at all, because there's low code, no code, there's AI assistants for programming. So actually, an idiot like me can program, and I've never learned how to program. Right? So it's not true. What you should do, first of all, is for your employers, for the agencies you work at, for your future peers, for the agency clients you may have in your future careers, understand very clearly that the winners of the web of the future will be the ones who generate genuinely differentiating, genuinely good, and thus genuinely hard to do things. And beware of structures and organizations that only ever take shortcuts, because it's not sustainable. The ones who create the reviews without ever testing the stuff, well, it's like at the very end of the lifeline now, because now there's an alternative out there that prevents it. So be wary and be the advocates for quality, be the advocates for effort, BD advocates for building good stuff, because the good stuff, you know, that's AI proof, right? And again, like creating the laboratory for millions of euros to test keywords correctly, that is an AI proof job. That contributes new information to the world instead of just recapping stuff that's already out there. So beware jobs, beware positions, beware companies that just want you to kind of redigest what already exists. And the second piece of advice that I would have is to become productivity maniacs. And by being a productivity maniac means being extremely lazy. It is the key for true productivity to be so lazy that you find ways to make your life easier. You spend the 10 minutes once to save 10 minutes every day. And this means not necessarily learning AI, though AI is part of it, but also looking at low code, no code automation, looking at, improving your spreadsheet game, improving your kind of like usage of your everyday tools, learning your shortcuts, just doing everything to do stuff easily. In a client we worked at, I can say it orally, Dassault Systèmes. They are an amazing French company. Awesome. There are also 25 global teams, central teams, who need to coordinate constantly about briefings, about which campaign goes where, et cetera, et cetera. It is a huge challenge. What did we do? It's not even a digital marketing thing. It's a process thing. We created hundreds of little automations on transforming emails into formalized briefings via large language models, putting these briefings into central repositories, creating automated rules based on these briefings that the correct people in their organization are informed about these briefings, can have like their vetoes or their feedback on the things, automatically forwarding these briefings to creative agencies, automatically putting the creatives into directories for the booking teams, for the media planning teams, and then automatically filling in the media plans. So we replaced 15 very boring jobs with a bunch of scripts, and it took us 2 days, right? So be on the correct side of this game, right? And it's actually very nice because it values, it kind of rewards finding ways to not be bored. So low code, no code, learn Zapier, learn Integromat, learn Make. And of course, if you can program, use programming, learn Google Apps, Google Workspace scripts, learn VBA scripts for Microsoft Office, right? And by the way, it's super easy to learn now because AI does 80% of the work. So you can literally just ask AI, any AI tool, on how to create a VBA script to do a specific thing with 500 Excel tables. And they will tell you how to do a specific change in 500 Excel tables at the same time. That stuff makes you differentiated, really valuable. You will generally be the superstar in every organization you're in. And fun fact, this stuff has been around for 15 years and most companies have not adopted it, right? So don't think that AI will replace 1 million jobs overnight, because the thing that can replace 1 million jobs overnight 15 years ago has not been adopted yet. So, you can be a pioneer on that stuff as well and be a superstar. So that would be my second piece of advice in this new universe. Be a very lazy productivity fanatic.
Be lazy, but first be smart.
It helps.
Thank you very much.
Thank you all. It's lovely.